Welcome back to another episode of the Corporate Curriculum with Dr. Danny. Before we even get to what I'm talking about today, please like and subscribe to my channel. And of course, you can comment after the video. Today, we'll be talking about respectability politics. So there's two things I want to talk about related to respectability politics. One is Ryan Clark being fired from ESPN, and also the Tuskegee University dress code. All right, so let's get into it. Ryan Clark. So Ryan Clark was a very popular, and some would say very successful commentator on ESPN. He was very successful, I think, partly because he was successful in his NFL career. So he is a NFL championship winner, Super Bowl winner, and I'm sure he has other accolades. I'm not even going to act like I know who Ryan Clark is, but like many of you, he has come up a lot on my timeline this week, last couple weeks, because he was fired from ESPN. So he also has a very popular sports show talking about sporting events, sporting topics called The Pivot. So I watched his interview on The Pivot this week because I wanted to reflect on his experience of being fired from ESPN, and I wanted to hear firsthand from him about how he felt about that experience, because I was seeing a lot of headlines about what he felt and how he wish he could have been in order to be successful in that space. And when I was seeing those clips, the first thing I thought about is, respectability politics again. Showing up in a space, a corporate space where you can't fully be yourself. You can't advocate for your people. You can't give your honest opinion, even if it's not in advocacy. You just sharing how you feel about situations. Specifically for him, he talked about how he was sharing about Angel Reese and other things that related to the black experience in sports, and that he was getting a lot of flack for that, right? Even though other colleagues may have shared some of the same sentiments, it seemed like he felt like he was particularly being highlighted or getting more flack because he was also black in that space, right? So I listened to the interview he did on The Pivot, and I was just really shocked that he was surprised that he was fired. And 2026, like, we know what it's like to be black in America. Like, this is post-slavery, post-Civil War, post a lot of different things, but a lot of the same systems are still in place that makes it very difficult for us to hold on to positions, even if we are being successful, or what we would think would be successful in that space. So some of the things he talked about is his feelings of just wanting to be accepted and wanting to be loved, and being a commentator on ESPN, I think, was a dream job for him. And he felt like that platform was such a huge platform that he would really do, it sounded like almost anything to be able to stay there. He didn't say that specifically. One of the things he just said was that, if he knew what he could do differently to change, he may have changed. He also said, like, it would have hurt more to be fired for being inauthentic, but he was kind of going back and forth about what that authenticity would have looked like. A lot of times when we're in this spaces, in this corporate space, we're really we spend a lot of time trying to mold ourselves to be, respectable. Like, oh, we're going to show up in a 3-piece suit. We're going to show up early. Growing up, when I grew up, it was like, oh, you got to work twice as hard. So you're going to be on every meeting, even when your colleagues wasn't on those meetings. And to feel like you're doing all the things that you are taught would make you be successful, and you're having success, right? He was nominated for 4 Emmys, and to still be fired, it's definitely hurtful, right? It's definitely hurtful, but to me, it's really not surprising. Like, there's so many different examples of this. Even, Joy Reid was recently let go from a position. Again, she was very successful, bringing in, high numbers, but no matter what you do, at some of these corporations, the systems are still in place that's not going to value what you are bringing to table, whether it is, actually showing that you have high numbers or you're not getting as high numbers because of who you are. And so when we talk about respectability politics, I think I really struggle with that, because it's like, we know for generations that when people are prejudiced against you, whether they're prejudiced because of your race, whether they're prejudiced because of your gender, your nationality, like, you can't dress that up. You can't be in a suit. You can't show up 2 hours early. There's nothing that you can do to prevent people from being prejudiced against you. And I'm saying this because I think his sentiment was a little bit around, like, he felt like, even though he was doing all the right things, he was still fired because he was speaking up on behalf of his people, because he's black as well. So I learned a long time ago that, you could really, really love your job. You can really do a good job. Sometimes you may not even get the awards or the accolades for doing a good job, and you could still be demoted or fired. So when I was a teacher a long time ago, maybe about 10 years ago, this was maybe 10 or 15 years ago, there was a new mandate around testing for teachers. So teachers had to be certified, and if you weren't certified, either you got fired. So the district that I worked in, they fired maybe about 300 or 400 teachers because they didn't have their certification at a certain time. And then people who were former teachers and they worked at the headquarters, they were also demoted. I would say demoted back to the classroom. And it was at that time when I was like, oh, it really doesn't matter. Like, you can do a really good job and be offered these new opportunities, even elevate in your career. And then you could get a new administration, a new leadership that could just come back and insert new policies, and everybody could go back to square one. Like, I learned that was like, teaching was my first, like, corporate kind of job or whatever. So from then on, I always felt like, I can love my work, but I don't have to love my job, right? Because the work that I do, and I talked about this in the last episode, is what do you want to be known for? I'm doing the work that I'm doing because I'm passionate about that work. And hopefully that I will have opportunities, especially if I'm doing a good job, to do that work in different places. And that means that I'm not so hung up on where I'm doing that work. So I'm not hung up on the idea like, oh, if I'm doing that ESPN and that's the biggest sport platform, that's the most important thing. The most important thing is that my voice is being heard. I'm being able to talk about sports. If that is the thing that I want to talk about, in the instance of Ryan Clark, he can talk about sports. I heard that his podcast, The Pivot, is a very good podcast, and he has a lot of subscribers. A lot of people tune in to hear his perspective on sports, right? But when you are so caught up in these jobs, no matter what you do, no matter how successful you are, you could lose that job at any time. So it's important to know, like, why are you doing the things that you're doing? If you're doing it for the award, you're doing it for that particular, job or that particular company or corporation, you're likely to be disappointed. You're likely to be disappointed. So I think while I felt really bad for him, and I was watching, like I said, I watched the whole episode, I felt really bad for him because I think he really did love his job. He said that, but I wasn't really surprised. And I was also thinking, like, this is why you need to be authentic at your job, authentic and confident in who you are. Not to say that it wouldn't hurt you if you lose that position, but you know that you'll be able to do that same work in a different location, right? Like, you'll be able to continue to talk about sports and share your love of sport, and people who love you will continue to watch your platform. Your voice will continue to be heard. So that's kind of my thoughts on the Ryan Clark situation. All right, so the next thing that happened recently was the Tuskegee University dress code was released. Again, another thing that was happening in 2026, and I was like, respectability politics, are we back to that again? I didn't say this in the beginning, but it was in 1993 when a black woman coined the term respectability politics. And respectability politics is really about, thinking that you can showcase yourself in a way that will prevent you from being seen as less than. So, if you are dressed up in a suit, then if people are prejudiced against black people, when they see you in a suit, they will be like, oh, I'm prejudiced, I don't like black people, but not that kind of black, because you're in a suit, you must be a good black, Or when you talk about people who have maybe committed a crime or something, and you dress them up, because a lot of times when you talk about going to court or you're showing people in the news, you might show them. I said the person who committed a crime. I really should have said if you are a victim of a crime, so people don't say like, oh, that black person was smoking weed all the time or anything. They try to show pictures of them in like high school graduation or college graduation, or if they were a police officer or a veteran, they try to show them in a light that presents them in a way that is loved by mainstream or acceptable standards, mainstream standards, whether they have a family, they live in a white picket fence. So they try to show them in a respectable way, right? And so my thing is, that doesn't stop people from being prejudiced against you. And if you've been to an HBCU, that is a very special place. I love my HBCU. I'm a graduate of Morgan State University. I have 2 degrees from Morgan State University, but I'm also a first generation college student. And HBCUs are built for us, black people who were excluded from attending predominantly white institutions, black people who wouldn't be accepted, whether it's on the sole base of race, or whether they're saying like your GPA isn't high enough, or if the school that you came from, the high school that you came from, is not prestigious enough. It's all kinds of things that are used to prevent us from going to other types of institutions. So HBCUs are really built for us to feel like we are supported, we are affirmed in our culture and our being as black people. And so to see Tuskegee University, I know this is not a new thing, but to see them set a dress code in which students can't wear bonnets, or they can't wear do-rags, or they can't wear revealing clothing. Revealing, I'm gonna just tell you, that's a little trigger for me, right? Because I'm a woman that has a body. So anything for me could be considered revealing. I feel like when they say revealing, that's a policy that's only for women, because what is revealing for men? Unless they're coming in there with like, well, I guess I'm not even going to say. But usually when I think about revealing, I'm thinking about revealing clothing for women. And all of those things is so people won't be distracted, right? that makes me think about victims of SA, in which you report that something has happened to you, and the first question people ask you is, oh, what were you wearing? As if what you were wearing determines if somebody should do something to you against your will, right? And then they present this policy under the guise of being prepared for a workplace. Like, oh, we want to make sure that students are prepared for a workplace. Listen, most of us are working from home. A lot of us are working from home. Like lounge wear, athleisure wear, especially since COVID has really been the standard of dress. And I've worked in a few places. It's very rare for me to see somebody be sent home because they didn't have on a 3-piece suit or a dress suit or a pantsuit, right? When I was in college, I had I can't remember what kind of job it was called, but it was one of those jobs where you work on campus and they gave you like a little stipend to help with your tuition. And so, I guess it's been ingrained in me as well that you dress for the job that you want, etc. So I showed up in a suit for the interview for the job. I was going to be like the assistant to the administrative assistant. And so I showed up in the suit. I had my hair straight, nice little blowout and everything for the job interview. When I went back after I got the job, or the first day of the job, the dean came in and he was like, oh, where was the girl we hired? I was completely different. I think I had braids. I don't know. I changed my hair all the time. I definitely was not in a suit. I was in regular clothes at that time. That man did not even recognize me. But he didn't fire me because he didn't recognize me. But it was just so funny. He definitely came in and like, oh, where's the nice young lady we hired? Oops, sorry, it's me, sir. It's me. But, it's just really unfortunate that we are reverting back. And I'm saying I'm just talking about HBCUs, specifically Tuskegee University, that we are really reverting back to these policies that has been shown for generations has not worked. Like, there are so many instances, not even just like the dress code, right? Because even me, like I've been, I guess, I don't know if I want to say a perpetrator, or I've been conditioned to believe like, oh, if you dress a certain way that people would respect you a certain way. That was a long time ago. Like when I think about your hair, because I'm a person that changes my hair all the time. But when I think about going into corporate spaces and I'm like, oh, I can't wear this blonde hair. So when I used to be a teacher, I used to get fun hair like in the summertime. Because I was like, I can't go in the classroom with blonde hair or blue hair or red hair. And they would take me seriously. And it could be the students or the administrators. So there was times where I felt conflicted. And even now I feel sometimes conflicted. But I'm more aware. I've grown. I've learned. I have so many experiences. And I know the leadership at Tuskegee University knows as well that respectability politics is not the way to go. Requiring students to wear suits and restricting them from being able to express themselves, whether it's through their hair, through their clothing, other ways of expressing themselves, is really not the way to go. I saw something recently on Trevor Noah's podcast with Vic Mensa. He was being interviewed by Trevor Noah, and he talked about MLK. And he talked about how, a lot of times we compare, like, if I would have been MLK in the time and chose nonviolence, or if I would have been, Malcolm X and been more aggressive about things. And I know people really try to dim down MLK's light and say like, oh, he was nonviolent, he chose this approach, and they say like that was a better approach, right? Thinking about his approach, Vic Mensa was saying like, oh, he chose that approach. It might have required more strength to be nonviolent during those times, but he chose that approach to show America, and I guess beyond, who the real perpetrators of the violence was. And even then, when black people were being hosed and, run down by dogs and beat in the street, even when they were being nonviolent, they were in 3-piece suits, they were working as hard as they could. Like, that did not stop them from experiencing the things that, they experienced during civil rights and Jim Crow. So there's not a suit that you can put on. Like, maybe it might be a temporary thing. You might be able to go in and get the job like I did with my straight hair and my suit. I got the job. But that's not going to be the thing if people are prejudiced against you that, helps you succeed. And I'm talking about this, and I always like to say, like, I'm only sharing like one perspective, right? Because in some situations, maybe being, dressed in a 3-piece suit, conforming to all the systems will allow you to succeed in certain spaces, and maybe even a lot of spaces. It will allow you to succeed. But what is the cost of that success? Like, what is the cost of going into these places, stripping yourself of your creativity, stripping yourself of your culture, stripping yourself of your joy, your authenticity? What is the cost of that? I never want to live a life where I can't be free, right? I never want to live a life where, I'm always just watching the way I speak. I'm always in a 3-piece suit. Even on this podcast, like, I know there's plenty of people that do podcasts, full makeup. They have, designer down, and that makes people want to watch them and, make people want to be like them. But I prefer to live more authentically. That brings me joy. And I feel like for a lot of people, when you're spending so much time code switching or, doing things that's kind of anti who you are, that makes you depressed. It makes you do things that maybe you wouldn't want to do. It's a sacrifice that I don't think we should be teaching our children and the next generation to do. Like, I feel like we have enough evidence, enough examples that regardless of, how spiffy we're dressed, spiffy is such a weird word, like how sharp we're dressed, that there's policies in place. We should be really teaching our kids about how to dismantle some of these systemic barriers that they are going to face. Like, of course, yes, in order to get into some of these spaces, there are some things you may have to do. Some of us are willing to do it and some aren't. But to focus your energy on how people are dressed, I feel like is a lost cause. It's such an old, outdated idea. And like, even if sometimes I look at people like, hey, why does this person have a bonnet on? Like, I can check my own prejudice, right? Like, I shouldn't be sitting in judgment of people and what they choose to do and how they choose to live their lives, especially if it's not, harmful to other people. So it's just an interesting time for me when I'm thinking about how, with all the things that are going on, we are still in an age in which our institutions such as HBCUs, are preparing our students to assimilate to systems that were not built for us, that are like anti to who we are. And these systems have been very harmful instead of preparing them to be system breakers, barrier breakers, to get in here and dismantle some of these systems. That's what I think we should be doing at HBCUs. That's what I think we should be doing in our homes. And it's sad. It's sad that we're still talking about respectability politics. It's really sad. So, Tuskegee University, the experience that, Ryan Clark had, while I feel for him and losing his position, I just want us to think about, like, how are we creating those spaces where we feel seen, where we feel heard, where our mental health is not at the detriment, or we don't have to sacrifice that to make money. And I know it's hard, right? Like, when we're talking about this, and like I said, I'm not someone who hasn't conformed or assimilated and done some things, but I've been in this game for a long time, so I'm unlearning a lot of things, right? And I really wouldn't, if I had children, I really wouldn't want to send my child to an institution that using antiquated ideologies to help them conform and assimilate to systems that we know are harmful to black people, right? So I know it's difficult. I know that even when we have been successful in places, there have been systems that come in and wipe out that success, and we're starting over, and it's hard. But I just think about often, like, what does success actually mean, right? Because we all can't be Beyonce and Jay-Z. We all can't be, Bill Gates and the guy who owns Amazon. And, like, we all can't be those people. But I would like to be happy in this life that I'm living. I would like to be doing work that helps my community. I would like to feel good about the work that I'm doing. And I wouldn't want to be making money, but also, like, feeling bad about that. But at the same time, I want to have health care. Like, I want to be able to go and choose my health care plan from many more options than I have now. But, like, I want that. I do need life insurance. I do need food and housing. Like, we do need those things. But I think we just need to really reconsider what success looks like. And if it looks like having positive mental health, if it looks like rest, if it looks like doing the work that we want to do, then we need to reconsider if we want to start adopting some of these antiquated policies, especially respectability politics. That is, like, that's enough. Like, we can't go back there. But all right, I talked enough about that. If you have some comments or questions, anything you want to share about that, feel free to send a comment, DM me, let me know what you're thinking about this. All right, so enough about the respectability politics. Well, I don't know if it's enough because it might come up. I have a new game for you guys. It's called Call Out or Call Them In. So it is the corporate curriculum game. Next episode, I'm going to have some little paddles so I can tell you if I'm going to call out or if I'm going to call them in. And so in this game, I'm going to share some scenarios that happen at work. And I'm going to tell you if I will call them out or if I will call them in, right? So first one, you share idea with a colleague, or you completed most of the work on a project, and when you get in a meeting, the colleague takes credit for that work. Do you call them out or do you call them in? So this has happened. Of course, this has happened to me a couple different times. I think the first time I may not call them out or call them in. I might just note it. Like, okay, I'm anti my game at this point because I didn't choose one, right? So I would just note it and say, like, oh, okay, I see how you're moving. The next time that they do it, I will call them in and say, hey, so-and-so, we worked on this project together. I was hoping that you would be able to give me credit in the meeting, or why didn't you say my name in the meeting that I supported your project? So first offense, I will just charge to the game. All right. Whatever happened, maybe they didn't think about it. The next offense, I'm going to call them in. Come on. Let's have a conversation. Let's have a conversation about this. All right. Scenario 2. A manager yells at you on a call, whether that's like in a meeting full of people or one-on-one. Would you call them out or call them in? If you yell at me in a meeting, I'm going to call you out. I don't know like what I would say or how I would say it, but the conversation has to come to a full stop. You can't yell at me during a meeting in front of a lot of people. That is one of my pet peeves, right? Or triggers. I don't know how to describe it. That would be a problem. If it was a one-on-one call, I may let them continue the conversation, but I'm going to call them in. Like, all right, I know you're upset. but there's a particular type of way you need to be speaking to me, and you're not being respectful, right? So definitely gonna call them in, and I might call out the next day because now I need a break. I need a mental health day. I'm sick of this job. I'm sick of work. I'm sick of you. All right, last scenario. Every time you share an idea, you are shut down. Either somebody say, oh, that's not a good idea, or we're going to move it in the next direction, or they just ignore your idea and do something else. Are you going to call them out or call them in? So this has happened to me before with senior leadership. So I was working on a project in which I was the project leader. And during the project, we would meet. I would meet with my team. We would come up with a strategy. We would start working on a strategy. And then like our manager for the project would come in after we had did all the work and then give totally new ideas. Like, oh, we should just do this after we spent hours working on a strategy. He was invited to all of the meetings. He was sent all of the documents and may not have responded on time, like by the time we needed to like submit some of the deliverables. And so I had to call him in. I had to say like, hey, like I feel like we're not, working together well. And if you could share with me like where your pain points are, and I can share with you my pain points, and then we can develop a strategy for how we can work better together. So I called him in, say, hey, let me talk to you, in a very professional way. Like, can we have some time to talk about this project, because I don't think it's really working out. So I called him in, right? So that is the first segment of the game. Call them out or call them in. Next week, I have some paddles. If you have some questions or scenarios that you want me to tell you whether you should call them out or call them in, or if you should call out after you call them in, leave a comment on the video. Leave a comment on my Instagram. Thank you for joining me. Again, this is the Corporate Curriculum with Dr. Danny.